The first time I heard the crash next door, I told myself it was none of my business. People argue. Walls are thin. Life happens. That is what I kept repeating as I stood in my garage, with a screwdriver in my hand, staring at a half-dismantled carburetor, like it could keep my mind from drifting. Then I heard her voice. Not loud like his, not angry, just shaken, pleading, like she was trying to calm a storm with bare hands, and something in me went still. I am Noah. 25. I live alone in a creaky rental house on the edge of town outside Portland, Oregon. The paint on the porch is peeling. The yard is overgrown because I keep telling myself I will handle it next weekend, and then I never do. The kitchen is so narrow I can touch both walls if I stretch my arms out. It is not much, but it is mine. I work at a local garage fixing cars, oil changes, brakes, belts, whatever comes in. It pays the bills and keeps me busy. Quiet has always been the point of my life. No visitors, no drama, no surprises. That is how I like it. So when the Reeds moved in next door a few months ago, I kept my distance. Mara and Chase. A couple that looked normal if you only saw them from far away. Mara was in her mid-30s, with dark hair she usually kept in a neat bun, and a gentle smile that hit me in the chest the first time I caught it. She watered her flowers, like she cared about every petal. Chase was taller, broad-shouldered, and always revving his black pickup truck like he wanted the whole street to know he existed. We never spoke much beyond a nod, a quick hey, nothing more, until that Sunday afternoon. The shouting started while I was in the garage, the door half open, the sky outside turning darker like rain was coming. At first it was muffled, just loud tones. Then it got sharper. Words started to cut through. "Waste of money," Chase yelled. Then something about time and promises. Mara's voice came next, softer but trembling. "Please, stop. Just stop." Then a crash. Glass or a plate, I could not tell. The sound made my hands freeze. My throat went dry. For a second, I stared at my workbench like I could force myself to ignore it. I tried. I told myself it was not my problem. Then the door next door slammed hard, followed by footsteps crunching over gravel. I stepped out of my garage, wiping my hands on a rag, and that is when I saw her. Mara ran across her yard like she was escaping a fire. She clutched a small canvas bag to her chest. Her face was pale, her eyes were red and swollen. Her hair had fallen loose from its bun, dark strands sticking to her cheeks like she had been wiping tears away for a long time. She reached my gate and stopped, breathing hard. The rain started as a few light drops speckling the ground. Mara lifted her eyes to mine, and I swear I felt something pull inside me, like the quiet life I built just cracked. "Noah," she said, and her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm sorry to bother you." Her hands shook around the strap of her bag. "Can I stay here tonight?" It was not the kind of question you ask a neighbor you barely know. It was not casual. It was desperate. Her eyes were wide, searching my face like she was begging me without saying the words. I did not ask what happened. I did not ask why me. I did not ask why she was not calling a friend or her family or anyone else. I just stepped forward, unlatched the gate, and held it open. "Come on in," I said. Mara hesitated, glancing back at her house. The curtains were shut tight. The porch light glowed behind them like a fake sense of safety. Then, the roar of Chase's truck cut through the air as it peeled out of the driveway, tires spitting gravel like anger. Mara flinched at the sound. Rain picked up, a steady tapping on the pavement now. She took one step through my gate, then another. And when she followed me into my house, it felt smaller, instantly, like the walls noticed her presence. Inside, she stood in my living room, still clutching her bag, shoulders hunched, like she was bracing for someone to burst through the door. I turned on the lamp. Its warm light hit the worn-out sofa, the frayed armchair, the scuffed floorboards. It was not a place meant for company. But she was here anyway. I went into the kitchen and boiled water. I found a box of chamomile tea I barely touched. I poured it into a clean mug and brought it to her. "It's not much," I said, setting it on the coffee table. "But it's warm." Mara took the mug with trembling hands and sank onto the edge of the sofa like her legs finally gave out. She stared into the tea like it might tell her what to do next. "Thank you," she whispered. I sat across from her in the old armchair, hands resting on my knees, trying to keep my face calm. Outside, the rain drummed against the windows. The sound filled the spaces where words should have been. Mara kept glancing at the front door. Every few seconds. Like she expected him. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "You're safe here, Mara. You don't have to say anything if you don't want to." Her eyes flicked up to mine, and for a moment I saw something crack in her expression. Relief, maybe. Or exhaustion. She nodded once, small and shaky, and took a sip of the tea. The silence between us stayed heavy, but it was different now. Less like emptiness and more like a secret hanging in the air. And as I watched her sit there in my quiet house, wrapped in fear and rain and whatever she ran from, one thought kept circling through my mind. If Chase knocked on my door tonight, I was going to have to decide what kind of man I really was. For a while after I said she was safe, neither of us moved. The rain kept tapping the windows, steady and cold, like it was trying to drown out whatever was happening inside my little house. Mara held her mug with both hands, shoulders still hunched, eyes still sliding to the front door every few seconds. I wanted to ask 100 questions. What did he do? How bad was it? Why did you come here? But the way she looked, like one wrong word might shatter her, made me swallow them all. So I tried something smaller. "You want a blanket?" I asked. Mara blinked like she forgot blankets existed. Then she nodded. "Yeah," she whispered. "That would be nice." I got up and grabbed the spare blanket from the closet, the one I kept folded on a shelf like I was always expecting a guest but never actually had one. I brought it back and draped it over the back of the sofa. She pulled it around her shoulders right away, and I watched her breathe out slowly, like warmth helped her remember she was still a person. "Thank you," she said again, softer this time. I sat back down in the armchair and looked at my hands. They were still stained from working on the car, grease caught in the lines of my skin. I felt out of place suddenly, like I was not built for this kind of moment. I was built for bolts and oil and problems I could fix with tools. This was different. Mara stared into her tea for a long time. Then she spoke, like the words slipped out before she could stop them. "He didn't hit me," she said. I lifted my eyes to her. "Chase," she added quickly, like she needed me to understand. "He's not like that. He's not a monster. But it's like living with someone I don't recognize anymore." Her voice wavered on the last part. I nodded slowly. "Okay." She swallowed hard, fingers tightening around the mug again. "It started with little fights," she said. "Money, work, dumb stuff. Then it turned into every day, and now I'm always waiting. Waiting for the next thing that sets him off." I stayed quiet, letting her talk. "Last night," she continued, "he threw a glass at the wall because I asked where he'd been. I cleaned it up before he woke up. Like I always do." My jaw tightened. I felt anger rise up, sharp and hot, but I kept my voice calm. "That's not okay, Mara." She gave a weak laugh with no humor. "I know." The rain outside grew louder for a moment, wind pushing it against the window. Mara flinched at the sound like it might be his truck coming back. "You can stay here," I said, steady. "As long as you need." Mara's eyes lifted to mine, and for a second she looked like she didn't believe people could say things like that and mean them. "Why?" she asked quietly. "You don't even know me." I could have said the easy thing. "Because it's the right thing. Because you're my neighbor." But the truth was messier. "Because I know what it feels like to want a door to open," I said. "I didn't have that when I was a kid, and I'm not going to stand here and pretend I don't hear what's happening next door." Mara's face softened, and her eyes shimmered, but she blinked fast and looked away like she hated crying in front of anyone. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I shouldn't have dragged you into this." "You didn't drag me," I said. "You knocked. I opened." That made her look back at me, and the air changed slightly, like we both felt the weight of that choice. The night stretched on. We didn't talk much after that. I turned on the TV, low volume, some random movie I didn't care about, just to give the room a sound that wasn't silence. Mara sat with the blanket around her, tea slowly cooling. At some point, her shoulders relaxed enough that she leaned back into the sofa instead of perching on the edge like she was ready to bolt. Around midnight, I stood up and cleared my throat. "You can have my room," I said. "I'll take the couch." Mara's eyes widened. "No, Noah, I can't take your bed." "Yes, you can," I said, firm but gentle. "You need sleep. Real sleep. I don't sleep great anyway." She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't want you uncomfortable." I gave her a small half-smile. "I fix cars for a living. I'm uncomfortable all day. It'll be fine." For a second, her mouth twitched, almost a smile. Then she looked down, defeated, and nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Just for tonight." I showed her the bedroom. It was small, nothing special. A creaky bed, a dresser with too many tools in the top drawer, and a single window looking out at the backyard. I pointed out the bathroom and handed her a clean towel. "If you need anything, just knock," I said. Mara held the towel to her chest like it was something safe. Okay. When I went back to the living room, the house felt strange. Too quiet, but not empty. I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain and the soft creak of the floorboards settling. I thought I would fall asleep fast. I didn't. Every time a car passed outside, my body tensed. Every time the wind rattled the window, I pictured Chase at my door. I kept thinking about Mara's face when she asked to stay. The fear in her eyes. The way she looked like she had run out of places to go. Sometime after 1, I heard a sound from the hallway. Soft, stifled, crying. It wasn't loud. Mara was trying hard to keep it inside the bedroom, trying not to be heard. But my house was old. The walls were thin. And I heard it anyway. I sat up on the couch, heart pounding. I debated getting up, knocking, asking if she was okay. But something told me she needed space more than she needed questions. So I stayed where I was. I stared at the dark ceiling and listened to her quiet sobs fade into silence. And it made my chest ache in a way I didn't know how to fix. Morning came slow, gray light slipping through the curtains. The rain had stopped, but the air still smelled damp. I got up and brewed coffee, more out of habit than kindness, and threw bread in the toaster because it was the only food that felt safe to offer. When the bedroom door opened, I turned and saw Mara step out. She looked smaller in my oversized sweater, hair pulled back messily, face pale. Her eyes were still red but dry now. She held herself straighter, like she had forced her spine to remember how. She met my gaze and managed a tired smile. "I made a mess of your night, didn't I?" she said softly. I slid a mug of coffee toward her on the table. "Nah," I said. "You made it different. Sit. Eat something." She sat, wrapping her hands around the mug. Her fingers were steadier now. "Thank you," she said, and this time it didn't sound like politeness. It sounded like relief. And as we sat in my narrow kitchen with coffee steam rising between us, I realized something that made my stomach drop. This was not going to be just one night. Because I already cared whether she felt safe. The morning light stayed gray and soft, like the sky couldn't decide if it wanted to clear up or keep grieving. Mara sat at my kitchen table with her coffee, staring into the mug like she could read her future in the dark surface. I kept myself busy at the counter, spreading jam on toast, trying to make the morning feel normal even though nothing about it was. "You didn't mess up anything," I said, setting a plate between us. "It's just morning." Mara let out a small breath that sounded like a laugh but didn't fully turn into one. "You say that like you're used to having someone show up at your door in the middle of chaos." I shrugged. "I'm used to quiet. That's kind of the point." She nodded slowly, chewing a bite of toast. Her eyes flicked to the window, then to the front door like she was still listening for the sound of Chase's truck. After a minute, she spoke again, quieter. "I called my sister last night," she said. "She lives in Salem. She wants me to come stay with her." That hit me harder than I expected. Not because I didn't want her to go. Because I did. She needed distance from whatever was happening next door. But the idea of her leaving after one night made my house feel empty again already. "That sounds good," I said carefully. "You should go if you can." Mara traced the rim of her mug with a finger. "I know. I'm not ready to decide everything today." She looked up at me then, hazel eyes tired but steady. "Is it okay if I stay one more night?" she asked. "I'll figure things out tomorrow, I promise." The answer came out of me without thinking. "Stay as long as you need." Mara's shoulders dropped slightly, like she had been holding herself up with tension alone and finally got to set some of it down. "You're kinder than I expected," she said softly. I gave her a small grin. "You expected me to slam the door in your face." "I expected you to ignore it," she admitted. "Everyone ignores things like this." That made my chest tighten. I didn't want to talk about it anymore, so I pointed at the toast and tried to sound lighter. "Eat. Before it gets cold." She smirked a little and took another bite. After breakfast, the air inside the house started feeling too still. Mara kept glancing around like she didn't know what to do with herself. Like being safe felt unfamiliar. I knew that feeling. When you're used to bracing for impact, calm can feel like a trick. So I offered her something simple. "You want something to do?" I asked. "I could use help in the backyard." "It's kind of a disaster." Mara raised an eyebrow. "You're putting me to work, only if you want," I said. "No pressure." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but you're the one who owes me after making toast that dry." I laughed, surprised by the tease. "Fine, I accept." We went out back and the cool air hit my face. The yard was worse than I remembered, weeds reaching up like they owned the place, the fence leaning like it was tired. I handed her an old pair of gardening gloves and a small trowel. Mara pulled the gloves on and crouched near the weeds, tugging one free with a quick, strong pull. Dirt clung to the gloves, and she didn't flinch. Watching her work like that, focused and steady, made me realize how much she'd been carrying. We worked in silence for a while, the kind that felt comfortable. The smell of damp earth mixed with pine from the trees behind the fence. Birds chirped like the world didn't know anything was wrong. At one point, Mara glanced over at a small patch near the fence where I had tried to grow tomatoes and basil. "You garden?" she asked, sounding surprised. I snorted. "I attempt gardening. It's not going great." She smiled and moved toward the basil, touching a leaf gently with her fingertips. "My mom used to have a garden," she said, voice soft. "I'd help her when I was a kid. Then I'd draw the flowers after." "Draw," I repeated. Mara nodded, eyes drifting somewhere far away. "I used to draw all the time." Chase always said it was a waste of time, said I should focus on real work. Something sharp rose in me. I wiped my hands on my jeans and looked at her. "That's not his choice," I said. "If you're good at something, you do it." Mara's cheeks flushed slightly, like she wasn't used to anyone defending that part of her. I pulled out my phone before I could overthink it and showed her a picture I remembered seeing online months ago, a pencil sketch of a rose that looked so real you could almost smell it. "I saw this," I said. "It's yours, right?" Mara's eyes widened. "You saw that?" "Yeah," I said. "It's really good." Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. She looked down at the ground, embarrassed and pleased at the same time. "I haven't drawn in months," she admitted. "I forgot how." "You didn't forget," I said. "You just stopped." Mara didn't answer. She just nodded slowly, like she was letting that truth settle. We worked until the yard looked a little less wild. The fence still leaned, but it looked less hopeless. The weeds were piled in a heap like proof that we did something with our hands, something real. Later that afternoon, Mara got another call from her sister. She stepped onto the porch to talk, voice low, the wind lifting a few strands of her hair. I didn't listen, but I could hear the worry and urgency in the tone coming through even without words. When she came back inside, her face looked torn. "She wants me in Salem tonight," Mara said. "She's worried. She's talking about lawyers and getting away from Chase for good." I leaned against the counter, trying to keep my voice steady. "That sounds like a smart plan." Mara looked at me like she wanted to agree and couldn't. "Maybe tomorrow," she said. I need one more night to think." She looked at me again, softer this time. "Is that okay?" I nodded. "Like I said, stay as long as you need." That evening, after we ate leftover pizza reheated in my ancient oven, I dug out a stack of old DVDs. Not because I cared about movies, but because I could tell Mara needed something to do that wasn't thinking. We ended up on the sofa watching a cheesy old time travel movie. The kind with bad special effects and dramatic music. Halfway through, Mara leaned her head against my shoulder. It was small, careful, not asking for anything, just resting. My body went still for a second. I could smell her shampoo, something light and clean. Lavender, maybe. Her hair brushed my hoodie, and my heart beat too loud for the quiet room. "This is nice," she murmured, barely audible over the movie. I haven't felt calm like this in a long time. I didn't move. I didn't talk. I just let her stay there, letting the warmth of her against me fill a space I didn't know was empty. When the credits rolled, Mara sat up slowly like she remembered she wasn't supposed to be comfortable. She glanced at me, eyes soft. "Thank you," she said. Before I could answer, a sound cut through the night. The low roar of an engine. My stomach dropped instantly. Through the front window, headlights swept across my yard like a warning. The sound was loud, angry, familiar, even though I had only heard it a handful of times. Chase's black pickup truck. Mara's hand grabbed my arm so fast it hurt. Her fingers were shaking. "Noah," she whispered. I stood up, heart pounding, and walked toward the front door. Because the question I'd been trying not to think about was now right in front of me. If he knocked, was I going to open it? And what would it cost if I didn't? The truck stopped hard at the curb, tires crunching gravel like it was angry at the ground for being in the way. The engine kept running for a second, revving once, like a threat. Then, the driver's door slammed. Mara's grip on my arm tightened. Her nails pressed through my sleeve. "Noah," she whispered again, and her voice sounded small. I looked at her face, pale, wide-eyed, bracing. Something in me hardened, not with rage, but with a quiet decision. "Stay behind me," I said. I stepped onto the porch, and the cold air hit my lungs. The porch light flickered above my head, making the peeling paint look worse than it already was. Chase stormed up the walkway, broad shoulders tight, jaw clenched. I smelled whiskey before he even reached my gate. "Mara," he shouted, "get out here!" He spotted me and sneered like I was an obstacle he planned to move through. "So this is what you're doing," he said, voice rough. "Hiding with this guy." I stayed on the porch, keeping my body between him and the door. My heart was hammering, but my voice came out steady. "You need to leave, Chase." He laughed, harsh and bitter, and stepped closer to the gate. "Leave," he repeated. "That's funny. She's my wife." He grabbed the latch like he meant to rip it off. "Mara, get out here before I break this door down." Behind me, the screen door creaked. I glanced back and saw Mara standing in the doorway, hands shaking, eyes fixed on him. She looked terrified, but there was something else too, something new. A spark that hadn't been there yesterday. "I'm not going back," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut clean through the night. "Not tonight," she added. "Not ever." Chase froze for half a second like he didn't understand what he heard. Then his face twisted. "You don't get to decide that," he snarled, "after everything I've done for you." I felt my hands curl into fists at my sides. I didn't step forward, but I made my stance wider, ready. "Back off, Chase," I said louder now. "You're not coming in here." He leaned in toward the gate, eyes bloodshot, breath sour. "You think you're some hero," he said. "Some punk kid playing house. She's just using you to make me mad." He turned and pointed at Mara. "Tell him, Mara. Tell him how you always come crawling back." Mara's chest rose and fell fast. For a second I thought she might fold, the way fear makes you shrink. But she didn't. She stepped forward until she was just behind me, close enough that I could feel her presence like warmth. "I'm done crawling," she said, voice breaking but strong. "You broke things, Chase. Not just plates, not just glasses. Us. You scream. You come home drunk. You make me feel like I'm nothing." Her eyes shined, but her chin stayed lifted. "I'm done." Chase slammed both hands against the gate, making it rattle. "You're going to regret this," he growled. A porch light flicked on across the street. Then another. A door opened. I heard a neighbor's voice. "You okay over there, Noah?" It was Mr. Larson, the older guy 2 houses down. He stood on his porch with his phone in his hand, already watching. "I can call the cops," he added, loud enough for Chase to hear. Chase's eyes darted toward him. Then he looked back at me. Then at Mara. His jaw worked like he wanted to shout more, like he wanted to smash something. But the neighborhood was waking up. Eyes were on him. And even drunk men know when the room turns against them. He spit a curse under his breath and backed away from the gate. "This isn't over," he said, pointing at Mara, then at me. "You hear me. This isn't over." Then he stormed back to his truck, punched the hood hard enough to make a dull dent, and jumped inside. The tires screeched as he tore off into the night, the engine roar fading down the street. My legs felt weak when the sound finally disappeared. I turned around and saw Mara sink onto the porch steps like her body finally gave out. She pulled her knees up, arms wrapped around them, shaking hard. I crouched down in front of her, keeping my voice gentle. "You? Okay." Mara nodded, but tears spilled anyway. "I've never stood up to him like that," she whispered. "Never." Her breath came in short bursts. She wiped her face with her sleeve and looked up at me, eyes full of fear and something that looked like relief. "When you stood there," she said, "I didn't feel alone." My chest tightened. I sat on the step beside her, close enough to be there, not so close that I pushed. "You're not alone," I said. "Not here." Mara stared at the street where Chase's truck disappeared. Then she leaned her head against my shoulder. Light at first, like she was testing if it was okay. When I didn't move away, she rested there more fully. "Thank you," she whispered. We stayed on the porch until the neighborhood went quiet again. The air smelled damp and cold. The porch light buzzed above us. My heart slowly stopped pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. Inside, Mara didn't sleep much. Neither did I. But something had changed. Not just because Chase showed up, because Mara had spoken, because I had stood in the way. Morning came clear this time. Pale sunlight instead of rain. Over coffee, Mara's hands shook less. Her voice steadied. "I'm calling my sister," she said. "Today. I need to do this right." I nodded. "Good." She made the call in the living room, and I heard pieces of it. Salem, lawyer. Divorce. A place to stay. Her sister sounded firm and protective through the phone. When Mara hung up, she looked like she had been holding her breath for years and finally let it out. "I'm going," she said quietly, "not because I want to run, because I want to start over." My throat tightened. I knew it was the right move. I also knew my house was about to feel empty again. I helped her pack a small suitcase. She folded her clothes with careful hands, like every shirt was a decision. When she zipped the bag closed, she stood still in my hallway, eyes drifting over the worn walls, the scuffed floors, my quiet little life. "You gave me a place to breathe," she said. "You don't even know what you did." I didn't know how to respond, so I told her the truth. "I didn't think opening that gate would change anything," I said. But it did. Mara's eyes softened. Then she stepped closer. "If I ever need a place again," she asked, voice barely above a whisper, "will you still open the door?" My chest ached. I nodded once. "Always," I said. Her lips trembled. She reached up and touched my cheek, her fingers warm. Then she leaned in and pressed her cheek to mine, a soft brush that felt like a promise without words. "Thank you, Noah," she whispered. An hour later, a blue sedan pulled up. Her sister. Mara hugged me at the front door, quick but tight. And when she pulled back, her eyes held mine for a long moment. Then she walked down the steps and got into the car. I stood on my porch and watched her leave, the street quiet, the sun sitting low behind the trees like it was trying to be gentle. When the car disappeared, my house felt too still, too big, like the air had been holding someone's warmth and didn't know what to do without it. I went back inside and stood in my narrow kitchen, staring at the empty mug she used. I realized something that made my chest tighten. I had spent years building my life around being alone, convincing myself quiet was safety. Then Mara knocked and whispered, "Can I stay here tonight?" And in one night, she made me feel alive in a way I didn't know I missed. I didn't know if she would come back. But I knew if she did, my door would open. Because she wasn't just a neighbor anymore. She was the one person who proved my quiet life could still change.